Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another how-to video. I'm recording this on November 28th, 2015, but this is going up on December 25th, so Merry Christmas everybody. We're going to continue on with our current chapter, which is about test driving our tabs library. In the last episode, we had just finished implementing the ability to style the active tab and style it no matter which tab was the default. So now when you call the library, you're going to pass in a list of tabs as an array and an array of content elements. And what the library will do is it will make all the content elements except the active one disappear. Whichever one is the default will stay up. And it's going to disappear because we're applying a class to it that the caller, the person using this library, will create to make the class disappear. And it will style whichever tab is the default with some sort of special styling to make it pop out in some way. That was pretty much done when we left off. What we still had though was this test that we thought up earlier, which was that we want to make sure that we preserve existing classes on the active tab. And what I want to spend this episode on is talking about when you write tests and when you don't. So the rule is write tests for anything that you could break, anything that could possibly break, either as you're coding it now or that you think somebody might break via a refactoring in the future. And we want the test to act as documentation. As we've seen, we've spent a lot of effort on trying to make the names of these tests make a lot of sense, trying to make the way they read make a lot of sense. So the question I have for you is, does this test make sense? Do we need this test? Is it about something that could possibly break? Think about that for a moment. Do we need this test? Well, honestly, I don't know. I really don't. The way we're implementing this is by saying default tab.classlist.add. Now, if we were assigning a new class attribute, if we were saying default tab.setAttribute class and then active tab class, then absolutely we'd need this test because it would fail in that case. But here we're using .add active tab class, and we know that that just always works. It doesn't make sense to write tests for everything that you can think of. It only makes sense to write tests that improve the documentation quality and will prevent some sort of error now or in the future. And part of the judgment call in doing test-driven development is figuring out which things are worth testing and which are not. Too many tests make your code hard to read. Too few tests and you might miss something. So what's the right answer here? I think for me, I am inclined to get rid of this test. I don't think it adds a lot of value. But we do have it already by this test. This test does the same thing with content elements. But we do have it already, and it is something that can go wrong and has gone wrong in my code in the past. So since we already have it, let's keep it, but I don't want to give it too much weight. I don't want to put two tests around this idea. I just want to have one. And I tend to put my more important tests first. So what I'm going to say, I'll put this down towards the bottom and I'll say preserve existing classes when adding new classes. And what I'll do here is we'll make a hidden class here. We'll make a hidden content here, and we'll make an active tab here, and we'll just kill two birds with one stone. Now, some people really dislike having multiple assertions in one test. Obviously, I don't have that problem. But you will see people who make much more verbose tests. They have a lot more tests because they only put one assertion in each one. Personally, sometimes I wonder if that's just because they're happier having more tests. That makes them feel good to have more tests. Maybe that's uncharitable of me. Anyway, you can do it either way, but my preference is that when we have two concepts that are closely related, I'll just put the assertions for both of those concepts in one test. Now here, we've got the content element should preserve existing classes. And that's basically exactly what we had before. So we can run those tests. And it says it expected existing class, new class, but we got existing class hidden content. That's because I changed this, but didn't change the assertion. Let's try that again. There we go. Now I want to do the same thing for our tab. Let's call this existing content class, because we'll want to call the other one something like existing tab class. There we go. And let's say that default tab dot set attribute class tab class. And down here we'll assert for the default tab that we have existing tab class and active tab. Tab should preserve existing classes. And there we go. That works. Now, that is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Is there any way we can improve this code? You know, I'm not really seeing it. One thing that I am noticing here, though, is that in our tabs, I think there's now an opportunity to improve this. But before we do that, let's go ahead and check in what we have now. So here we've got some interesting stuff going on. Really what we're doing is we are showing a tab, aren't we? I'd like to factor this out into some code called show tab. And which tab are we going to show? Well, we're going to show the default tab. Now, how can we make that work? We'll need to basically pass through the tabs and the content and then factor this code to use it. So we'll make a new function called show tab. It's going to take the tab, all tabs, all content, or to start with, let's just call it tabs and content. And it's going to do these things, right? In fact, if we make this default tab, that should work pretty much exactly the same. Let's try running that. Yeah. So now can we take this and move it out? If we made any mistakes about which variables we passed in here, then this will now fail. And in fact, I think we did. It's going to need the active tab class and the hidden content class. Yeah. It sure does. It was getting those before because the function was defined in this initialize function. Oh, that totally did not work. Let's see. We've got 3 failures, getting a bunch of undefineds. Oh, well, because we've defined it here, but we never passed it through here. There we go. Now that we've done that, we can rename this variable to just be tab to show. This will be the tabs, the content, the active tab class, etc. Now what I wonder is, should I just pass this through as options? I think maybe we should. Let me check this in. So we've factored out our show tab method. If we just pass all this through as options, that should make a lot of this simpler. What if our check options just work directly on the options? If we did that and we pass our options through here, then we don't need these variables. There we go. That works. In fact, now we can put the check options first, which in a way makes more sense. And that should still work. And it does. And now we can take this, copy it down here, and pass options through instead of all these variables. And that should work. And it does, which means we can get rid of this. We can't totally get rid of it. We still need default tab. There we go. But honestly, we can inline default tab like that. And we won't need it here either. There we go. That's pretty nice. And for that matter, does it make sense to just inline these values as well? Maybe it does. Let's try that. So now we're saying active index equals find index of default element, option tabs, tabs to show, default content. Yeah, I kind of like this. Let's make sure that works. But now show tab isn't just about the default tab, is it? It's about any tab. So rather than calling this find index of default element, let's just call it find index of element or find element. And that should work. And that actually makes me think this is option.tabs is an array. I think arrays have a find element on them already, don't they? Maybe I was just being silly before. Let's see, array.prototype.find index. It does have find index, but it's part of newer code and it's not supported in Internet Explorer yet. So find element is the best we can do. But let's call it find element index or just find index to be consistent with the way array works. That way people who read this can tell that it's basically doing the same thing. Okay, so that's done. Now this isn't default content, this is just content to show. We've got tab to show and content to show. I like that symmetry. So now we're saying for each of our content tabs or content elements, we're going to add the hidden content class, and then for the content to show, we're going to remove the hidden content class, and for the tab to show, we're going to add the active tab class. And that is pretty nice. Yeah, I like that a lot. That really tidies this up. Good stuff. And with that, I think we've finished our marking tab with that as active, which means the one thing we have left to do is dealing with clicks. When you click an element, what happens? That's what we need to see happen next, and that is what we're going to do in the next episode. Your exercise for this time, no surprise here. Go ahead and modify the existing test about preserving existing classes to support doing it to tabs as well, and refactor your production code to make it cleaner. You can either follow the pattern we did here or come up with your own. If you're doing the challenge exercises, guess what? It's time to deal with clicks. So see if you can figure that out, and we will take care of that next time. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.